Welcome to the Baton Twirling Podcast, a show about all things baton twirling. From the latest news to interviews with world champions and connections made along the way. I am your host, Sarah Rudine. Baton twirling has taken me on an amazing journey, and I'm here to share part of that journey with all of you, one episode at a time. So sit back, enjoy the show, and let's get rolling. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Tell us your name and how you know me, which I think is so funny. But go ahead and tell the story.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. And like I said, this is awesome that you do this. Very much so appreciated. But my name is Songee Barker, and I met you when I was probably really little in Arizona. I grew up twirling in Arizona. I started when I was pretty little, and did I meet you at it must have been a baton competition, right?
I believe so, because I was twirling at U of A, and then I just remember you when you did my pageant, which was about around 13 years old or between 13 and 17 at least. So yeah, it has been a long time.
Yes, because I'm 26 now, and I remember you in my mind, like you in your U of A baton twirling costume, like that's how you are forever in my memory.
Yes,
I'm probably like 10 years old, like that's where it is. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your baton background and what you've done in life from baton to what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I started twirling when I was 5 years old. It was something that my mom signed me up for in Arizona. She saw I twirled with Miss Becky, the Arizona twirling athletes, when I first started. And she saw in our local newspaper when they came back from nationals. And I remember every year we'd have to take the photos at nationals with our medals so that we could send it to our local newspapers. And my mom saw that in our newspaper and signed me up for that. She said it was either that or Irish dancing.
Oh.
So, I mean, it would have been fun to be an Irish dancer, but I'm very much so appreciative that it went to baton twirling. And then from there, I twirled, grew up twirling in Arizona. I'd come to California to compete sometimes. And then I twirled in college at Georgia Tech, where I was both on the line, and then I had the honor of being the Georgia Tech Golden Girl for a year or two, which was really fun, a really amazing experience. And then I randomly, maybe not so randomly, but I also had a couple years ago, I competed at Miss California. So I picked up my batons again, probably I was 24, 25. So a few years after college had ended, and got back into twirling shape to compete at Miss California, and I made the top 15, which was really fun.
Oh, especially in California. Oh my goodness. That's huge.
Yes. It was fun. It was really fun to get back into it and have a reason to twirl again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where baton twirling took me so far. And now I do digital marketing / database marketing analytics. I've worked for companies like Guitar Center, the Walt Disney Studios, and I'm currently working at Viking Cruises. And I think one of the biggest things that's carried from baton twirling to my professional career has just been my work ethic and my tenacity. I have a lot of bosses who are like, "You're not afraid of hard work," and that's really refreshing. And I'm like, preparing for nationals during the summer was so much work. So just coming to work every day and doing what you're paying me to do really isn't that big of a deal. So
I can totally relate to that.
Right? You're like, I don't understand. I'm here to do work.
I know. I was like, but I used to spend 8 hours in a gym on weekends. What do you mean I'm working hard? This is nothing. Not nothing, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's you got that work ethic, and I think tenacity is a perfect word for it. It's
get up and keep going. Keep smiling.
Yeah.
Just keep moving.
Doing it all with a smile on our face. Because we always know cameras around.
Yes, exactly. Always ready.
Yes. So how do you think baton twirling has helped you in other ways of pretty much just adapting to real adult life? Just because I can't believe you're an adult now and I still see you. You see me as, the girl at U of A, and I'm like, I still see you as my little 10-year-old that I was able to see all the time.
Yeah, and help me with pageants and everything. Yeah, I know. Baton twirling, just some of the skills that I've learned, like I said, the work ethic, the tenacity, the the persistence. And I feel like the desire to always be growing and changing and learning, because that's something that I think baton twirling and baton twirlers have that really good sense of like, you're never done learning. You're never going to be the best. Like, well, you could be the best, but it's like, if you're the best, then it's like, instead of doing a triple illusion, you're going to do a quad. Instead of twirling 4 batons, you're going to twirl 5 batons. So there's never really like a cap of the learning and the knowledge that you continue to try and attain and grow towards. And I feel like professionally that has helped me a ton, because a lot of times I get jobs and most of the time I'm like, I know I don't know everything that you're asking for, but I'll work really hard, and I'm really curious, and I'm really passionate about learning, and like, it's something I love to do. And that has helped me a ton as well, because people can see that. And then I get in there and I work really hard and I learn a lot. So it's a lot of those skills of just like continuing to push yourself and then being thirsty for knowledge and continuing to grow, just like you have to do in baton to stay on top of your game.
Yeah. It's funny that you said the thing about like, you're never going to be the best. And that's probably the best advice I ever received, was there's always going to be somebody better than you, and there's always going to be somebody worse than you. And I'm always like, okay, keep going for it. Even if I'm not going to make it to the top, at least I'm progressing. Like, this is good. This is what I consider success. So I love that you said that, because I'm like, you're on the right track. You're going to be like, you're going to be running a company someday.
Right? You just got to keep going.
If somebody asked you, do you think it's good to put somebody in baton twirling so young, like 5 years old? That's so young. How would you respond to that? What would you say to those people?
I think it is. I think done tactfully, it can be really, really powerful and really empowering. Because my mom, I think she's more of like a stage mom, pageant mom than she thinks she is, because she's competitive and she likes to like look at all the different angles and everything, but she wouldn't really push me into something that I didn't want to be in, or like if I wasn't showing interest in it, or I didn't want to be doing it, she would be like, okay, then you don't have to do it. And she would support me in anything that I did.
Good.
So I think done well, and like, especially starting from a young age, even just like the physicality of it, of like getting the mind body awareness from that young age is super helpful and super powerful, just as you age and like try and continue to move mindfully. I'm very big into like, I am a CrossFit coach and a yoga teacher now. So I'm very big into like the mind body connection and like functional movement. And I really think baton, like establishing that at a young age really helped. And especially like going back to the work ethic and just knowing that like I had friends. I remember like growing up, it'd be like, oh, do you want to come hang out? Or I'd have like a baton twirling competition and have to go to practice or something. And I'd be like, and I also was a cheerleader through middle school and high school. And it would be like, go to cheer practice in the morning, go to baton practice in the evening. And sometimes I'd be like, I just want to do one. But I think it was like the work ethic and just like the tenacity and the perseverance, like we talked about, that really kind of shaped and molded me as a person. So I think it's absolutely like a good idea to start at a young age, done intentionally and done well, and like making sure that the 5-year-old is having a good time.
Yeah. Oh, trying to I have like a little group, the honeybees, and they're all little kids. And now that they're getting older, I'm like, oh no, I have to change my name. Like, you guys aren't honeybees anymore. You guys are like, let's go to like yellow jackets or something like crazy like that. But I totally understand that it's keeping their attention and making it fun for them. So yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I should call you like every day and be like, what are you doing now? So tell us, what is your favorite book? Like, what is something that you'd say everyone should read this book?
Oh man, I just recently got really into reading, back into reading, like, and I joined this book club on Instagram, and they're like reading all these classic literature books, and before I know it, I'm reading like an 800-page classic literature book, and I was like, I had no idea what I'm signing up for, but I'm loving it. But a few books, one that I just recently, I read when I was baton twirling, and my coach, after Miss Becky, I went to Doris Innes in Arizona.
Okay.
And she's also an awesome person. But she recommended I read a book called Mind Gym.
Mind Gym.
And I still have it. Yeah. And
Karen gave me that one.
Yeah. I saw it, and someone else had it on their to read list or their recommended books list. And I remember even like to this day, I read it probably when I was like 15,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember standing backstage at Miss California before I was about to go do my talent. And one of the big things they talk about in that book is visualization and how powerful of a tool that is. And I used it like in that moment. And it was something that I learned when I was so young from that book. So I think that's a really good book, really relevant to baton twirling and athletes really in any domain. Yeah. And then just for like a different one, I really like a book called The Four Agreements. It's like by a yogi. It's like really a good read if you're into yoga or into like the mental side of that.
Yeah.
So it's good about just being like intentional and not taking things personally and just trying to be like in a really solid mental state.
Oh man, you are so lucky that you are reading books now. Because I read like Harry Potter and stuff like that, and it wasn't until Mind Gym was the first like personal development book I read, and I'll never forget there was a part that I wrote in the book about I could see myself catching all the tricks for this like two baton routine that I won at nationals. It was like intermediate two baton, but I just remember it was like the most perfect routine, went flawlessly, and it's like I just caught everything. And then when I was reading that book, it like made sense of how that happened because I was just like in the zone, and I was rarely ever in the zone, so it was really nice. But then I started reading more stuff because I got Audible, and then I would listen to stuff as I'm driving, and oh my goodness, I finished like my Audible library is just ridiculous. So they always say readers are leaders, so you are on the right path. And I'm gonna go look up that book you recommended because that sounds
awesome. Yeah, I gotta get more into audiobooks. I'm listening to podcasts on my commute right now because I have a little
still
bit of
good.
Commute, like,
Yeah. You hear that? She's listening to podcasts. My mom's still like, I can't figure out how to listen to your podcast. And I was like, wow, I'll send you the link. It's not that hard. Just pull up the app.
I know, you got to queue it up. I will say, though, like the iPhone podcast app is not my favorite.
It's not.
I feel like it's not the most user-friendly.
And it doesn't really go in order. It's like, oh, here's the podcast that you listen to, and here's 8 other ones. And so you got to go find, So hopefully Apple fixes that one soon. I'm in total agreement with you.
Yes, but I like your site because it's easy. You can like find the post, click on it, listen to it. It's good to navigate. Very well done.
Oh, thank you. I was like, I'm in technology. I should hopefully have. Oh my goodness. And you're in technology too. Tell me your thoughts about baton twirling and technology, and I'm just going to say it, how we should get up to speed on technology.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I do work in technology, and I went to like a technical school, so we'd be into all like the latest and greatest technology stuff. But it's just, it's important for baton twirling, and I feel like some of the pageant worlds could get more technical too, because it's just where everyone is.
Yeah.
And so, like, you got to meet people where they are. And if you're, like, if you could sign up for contests online or, like, track different events online or even just finding baton groups or opportunities to twirl easier, I think would be a game changer for the baton community. Because it's, the classic thing is, like, when you meet someone, you're like, oh, yeah, I was a baton twirler growing up. They always say, like, my mom twirled. And you're like, why didn't you twirl, or why aren't your kids twirling? And I think it's really like you got to meet people where they are, and everyone's online. And like if baton twirling went more digital and there was more of a digital footprint of like how to get into baton twirling, I think it would be really, really good for the baton community.
Here in Texas, I helped my sister's teacher. They're the Sweet Sensations. I helped them create an online form for baton contests. And so we figured out how, it took me like 8 hours to make this thing, and I'm calling her and I'm like, okay, what do we need to change? You've run these contests a million times, and so we worked on this thing for like 8 straight hours. And then we were like, hey, well, we'll do it for other people. If you guys want it, like, well, charge a little fee. Well, we found out we can just send the actual format of the form to people. And so anybody listening to this, if you run a contest or know anyone running a contest, I will send you the form. You can modify it to whatever you want, and I will help you. Just get baton twirling online. Oh my gosh, I can't say it enough.
I love that. And I haven't, yeah, that's awesome. I haven't signed up for a competition in a really long time, obviously, but
yeah.
hopefully it's getting more digital.
Yeah, some of it is. I'm pushing for it. I'm hoping that the podcast gets out and people are like, hey, she was talking about technology and maybe she could help us. So there's other people out there too.
It'll help you so much.
It really will. And I think USTA does a really good job of utilizing internet and online stuff. And MBTA stepping up. But yeah, I think I really want to talk to somebody on USTA and be like, okay, what's the deal? Tell me how to get this into MBTA.
Yeah, yes, for sure. Yeah, I competed mostly at MBTA, but if USTA was like closer in Arizona or something, we go compete. But it seemed like, even from what I remember, like just getting the set sound and everything is easier with USTA.
Yeah, I agree. So with all that you've done with baton twirling, who are some of the, greatest people you've met and or like people who've really inspired you that you've met or you wouldn't have met if it weren't for baton twirling?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think first and foremost, like all of my coaches throughout the years, from Miss Becky with the Miss Arizona Twirling Athletes, and then Doris Innes, who I started taking private lessons from, and then I met Nancy Sheehan. She was Nancy Skelton when she twirled, and she twirled at Michigan State. I can't mess that up if I say university. Wait. The Michigan that's green. She's going to kill me if I mess that up.
MSU. Whatever it is, it's MSU.
Okay.
Michigan State.
I think it's Michigan State. Yes. And I truly think that just like having those coaches and having those role models of people who believe in you and push you, and honestly just having like someone who believes in you even when you're like, I definitely can't do that, or I'm not capable of that, or they see potential in you when you are like, I don't see that in myself, especially as you're young and growing up. That's really, really powerful. And I met Nancy really funnily at MBTA Nationals, AYOP one year, because I was doing some collegiate events and I was wearing my Georgia Tech costume. I was on the twirl line at that point, and one of her sons went to Georgia Tech, and he was actually there, and she was like, hey, my son's at Georgia Tech, do you twirl there? And I just sat down next to her in the audience and started talking to her, and she kind of became what I like to call my fairy godmother, because I was in school in Georgia, my mom lived in Arizona, and so it was like because I competed a couple of years when I was in college, and she would I'd go stay at her house some weekends, and she would just make me go out on her tennis court and practice and practice and practice. And she'd drive me to competitions. So it was just a really amazing person to meet. And even to this day, I still am in touch with Doris, and I talk to Nancy regularly. She comes and visits California sometimes, and I always meet up with her. And then me and Miss Becky stay in touch, and it's just they're always there, always supporting you. And then outside of that, just the girls that you compete with, there's people that I competed with, and I know there's one woman now, her name's Maddie Bukowski, and we would always stand next to each other in lineup groups because Barker Bukowski. But she's done amazing things. She went to grad school at Duke, and she just is a mover and a shaker in the world. And I just love following all these people as they progress through their lives in baton twirling and outside of baton twirling. It's just a tight-knit community of really inspiring, empowering women and men that I think is really cool. And you're doing this is awesome. You're giving back to the community, and just so many amazing people. Really quality people in baton twirling.
I would agree. I've met many people, and I'm hoping to get more connection episodes so I can show this is a very different world. And when you twirl, it makes your world so much smaller. So if somebody's like, oh, I know this twirler, and you're like, oh, I either know her or know someone that knows her or know of her. It makes the entire world very small when you know somebody in the baton twirling world.
Yes, for sure. Or when you're watching college football and someone will be you'll be at a bar and college football's on, you're like, oh, that's Arkansas, I know the baton twirler there. Or oh, that's South Carolina. Or oh, there's Mizzou. Yeah, they have 4 twirlers. And you know all these random football facts. Sometimes that happens at work, and they'll be like, how do you know what Auburn's mascot is? Or where Clemson's located? besides the fact that they're in the ACC, but like, I feel like they have a baton twirler. You know all the
Oh yeah, you know
baton
exactly where they are. I feel like if I had my sister on here and we started talking facts, she could name like a twirler in every state because she just knows facts like that. I'm just imagining her being like, oh, I know the one at that one. I know the one at that. Marianne, if you're listening, I want you to tell me because like, I don't know if Marianne knows how to find these either. So
you gotta get Marianne on here. That would be a fun, like, name a twirler in every state game.
Oh my goodness, we need to do this. She's gonna be like, don't talk about me on the podcast.
No, that's great.
I need to do that, like, random facts with Marianne.
I love that.
Songee, thank you so much for coming on. I still can't believe I've known you for so long, and you're so grown up now. I love it so much. But thank you so much for coming on with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm going to have you back on again sometime. So just wait for my call.
I look forward to it.
Cool. Hey, listeners. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to the Baton Twirling Podcast. If you'd like to follow up with us, read the show notes, or get some neat baton freebies, reach out by going to batontwirling101.com. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.